Hi, everyone, and welcome to this broadcast. Mark DeJesus here, your brother from another mother, welcoming you into the healing and freedom journey. I'm all about mental, emotional, and relationship health. And if you are too, you've come to the right place. I want to discuss an important issue and subject for our mental health and healing journey. This segment here is a part of the curriculum that I'm teaching based on the book, The OCD Healing Journey. This book is available now. You can get a copy of it. And I am teaching the principles and precepts to the online healing and freedom community, which you can join today. I am taking time to piece by piece walk through this journey with my brothers and sisters that are passionate about experiencing healing and freedom, especially in the area of the obsessive compulsive battleground world, which branches into a lot of areas. But I thought when I was putting this video together, this would really benefit not only the OCD area, but really every area of mental health in our life, whether it's anxiety, depression, mood issues, OCD, healing from trauma, whatever it is very important that we understand the God filter that we carry. And I want to talk a little bit about that, about healing our distorted God filter. What do I mean by that? Well, when I'm sitting down with somebody and talking to them, and you can see this in your own life and people that you talk to, as you get to know them, whether you're sitting down to help them or you're just talking to a friend or you're talking to a relative. And if they're a believer, over time, you will start to pick up on the kind of God filter that they carry, meaning there's certain themes that they seem to manifest in what they attribute to being God, attribute to being God speaking, attribute to being, this is how God sees me, this is what God thinks about me. And a big part of our healing and freedom journey is learning, what do we associate and label with this is how God thinks. This is God's perspective. Listen to a preacher and teacher for a while, listen to me for a while, and you get a sense of what's the God filter that is this person is carrying. So when someone says God, well, what are you talking about? What does this mean? What do you associate in your journey with what God is saying or doing or his perspective? This is a major area that we need to address in our healing and freedom journey. And a big step in my own healing and freedom journey was when I realized I carried a distorted God filter, and what I associated with, this is what God is saying, this is what he's doing, this is what he's trying to get my attention with. I got to be honest, I grew up in the church my whole life, and I carried a lot of filters that were very unhealthy, and I see those same filters in many people, and it did not produce freedom in my life. It produced more bondage, it produced more burden, it produced more anxiety, more depression, more obsession. You get my drift? So I had to make an allowance. And this is often a big decision, big step. Okay, God, I need to relearn. I need to heal how I relate to you and who I think you are. This is not only helpful for mental health, this is helpful for life, because so many believers are manifesting a distorted God lens. I've talked about other aspects of mental health and healing from hearing from God. You can check out that video and more on that. But I want to speak to the OCD struggler. I want to speak to the anxious, the depressed, the mental health battlegrounds. And you're going to have to look and go, okay, I need some healing in how I see God. And there's some distorted God filters that you may carry. You may carry one of these, you may carry multiple ones of these, or you may look and go, Mark, I carry all of those. If you have, join the club, because I have too, and it's been a big part of my healing and freedom journey. The first one I want to address is what I call a rejection-based God. Now, I have a book and curriculum all based on this subject of exposing the rejection mindset. Rejection is a mindset that impacts how you see yourself, how you see God, how you see other people. And the base premise of rejection is this sense of separation, distance that is there, disconnect. it creates a sense of reality. It's not accurate, but a sense of there's a disconnect between you and God. It can also do this in relationship, but we're focusing on your God filter here in this video. So you feel this sense of separation, you feel it's true, so then you start trying to do stuff to fix it. That's basically what rejection does in our lives. And I have a whole lot of teaching on that in really confronting and exposing that lie, because so many Christians struggle with this. I want to feel close to God. I don't feel close to God. I want to be close. So what we typically do is we put more energy and more energy and more energy, and we start striving to fix this perceived sense of separation. Now, of course, I'm talking, to believers, and we fall under this lie that God's distant, he's far, he's away, and it hits these rejection wounds in our life because we believe this sense of God is distant. And we believe that God will abandon us. Now, there's a sense of our sin brings separation, right? But when we say yes to Christ, we are now coming into agreement that separation is broken. Rejection will want to stay with us to keep us in a lifestyle as a believer that God is, and we're always fussing and fixing over this perceived sense of disconnect. Of course, that's going to increase perfectionism. It's going to increase obsessiveness. It's going to increase compulsion. It's going to increase pressure because you're always in this striving to try to fix this perceived sense of distance, which then leads into another filter, which is a performance-based God. And this is a sense that God's primary method of relationship with you, his primary wavelength, is critiquing you and evaluating you. He has a clipboard out. He is constantly watching you. And many people, they treat God almost like he's Santa Claus in the sense of the song, you better watch out. You better not cry. You better not pout. I'm telling you why, God is coming to town. He sees you when you're sleeping. He knows when you're awake. He knows if you've been bad or good. So be good, for goodness sake. If you listen to that, it's like whether you're talking about Santa Claus or God, it's like, this is kind of weird. This is very, very strange. But we have this sense of he's always critiquing you. He's always performance evaluating you. Now, if someone, every time you interact with them, is always performance evaluating you, you know what? Hey, Mark, you should have done this. Hey, you should have done that. Right? That kind of relationship, then you're not really going to have a relationship. This is going to be just performance-based kind of living and interaction. And so in this, a performance-based person is, they're always evaluating, well, I haven't spent this much time with God. I haven't prayed. So they're always fussing over where they've fallen short in their metrics of what they're doing, their sin issues, their thoughts, how you're doing in your Christian behavior, service, thinking, then affects your standing with God. And so if a preacher gets real heavy, starts yelling at you and bringing out this intensity, it triggers that. Oh, you're right. I don't. A lot of preaching, it inflames performance-driven activity. A lot of anger, a lot of control, a lot of like black and white. It's got to be this and this. And I'm not saying preaching shouldn't have right or wrong. It shouldn't have passion. It shouldn't have a sense of a zealous love for God. I'm not saying it shouldn't have that, but there's a tendency for a lot of preaching to infuse performance-based. People go out there going, I got to do more. I got to do more. I got to do more. And we're seeing a manifestation in the body of Christ of exhaustion over this. We got to look at the fruit of what we're in the church producing. What's the fruit? Stop yelling at everyone and stop telling everyone, what they're doing wrong. I think preachers and teachers should look and go, what are we producing with our teaching and our content? Are we producing truth that sets people free? Life and life more abundantly, where people shackles are coming off? Or do we find that there's maybe one shackle they take off, but they trade it for another one? They trade it for performance and perfectionism in their life. And now they're just burdened down again with more stuff. And modern Christianity seems to pack on a lot of burdens upon the people. And I think we have to do an honest sense of what are we producing because we're producing a lot of performance-based Christians. So with that in mind, hold on, I got a cough. So in our journey of healing, OCD strugglers, anxiety sufferers, depression strugglers, whatever it is, we often have to realize we view God through a lens of doing things for him and never through the perspective of just simply being loved by him. Because the revelation of being loved by him is transformative. Whereas doing things for him constantly, I got to do, what's the next thing I got to do? Then we become obsessed with his will. Then we become obsessed with our calling. Then we become obsessed with using our gifts. Then we become obsessed with making sure that everything that we're doing has some kind of spiritual label to it. And now we just become religious, obsessive compulsives all the time versus being connected to just being loved by him, that he's here. He's not distant. He's here. Even though I might struggle with that, he's here. I'm going to learn what it means to be loved. And now your life is a response to that love. I'm telling you, this will change your life. When I learned to live my life in response to his great love for me, it changes everything. It changes my perspective. It releases pressure. It adds the fruit of the Spirit now, love, joy, peace. It just changes the motivation of what I'm doing now versus trying to live for God's love. I start to live from his love. Boy, those are big, big changes. But another one that's a big factor, a filter that you may need to address in your life, I see this everywhere, and it deeply impacts mental health, is a fear-based relationship with God. He is somebody that, I'm not talking about the fear of the Lord, which is a sense of awe, a sense of respect, a sense of honor. This is a chronic being afraid of him. And this impacts a lot of Christian behavior where connection to God, connection to his presence, reading the Bible, prayer is frightening. So there's a lot of avoidance. And this is where Christians typically fall into. We're afraid of connection with God. So we are more comfortable doing things for God. It's kind of the picture of Mary and Martha, where Mary was sitting before Jesus. Mary was busy preparing. Nothing wrong with what Martha was doing, but it took over into a sense where she's like, hey, I got to do all this work. And Jesus is like, Mary's connected to the important thing. Service needs to be a flow out of relationship. And in today's modern society, we're trying to fix our sense of disconnect with a lot of Christian activity. Do stuff in church, a lot of giving, doing. And we're uncomfortable with just connecting. We're uncomfortable with that. There is a lot of believers who think the anxiety, the panic, the obsessiveness they're feeling is God speaking to them. This was me for a long time. And it was a major change in my life because I associated that anxiety, that knotted up feeling, that agita, that kind of just, I don't feel right, kind of feeling, and anxiousness. God is trying to tell me something. And so I would act on that and go, see, and I would look at the outcome and go, see, and I'd have a few things I could say, oh, this is good, look at what happened, right? It was a trap. And I had to realize this thing was growing and growing and growing. And as the years went on, more avoidance, more confusion, more because that's what fear does. It creates a pattern of avoidance where we move away from something. We move away from decisions. We move away from tough choices. We move away from taking risks. We move away from anything that makes us fearful. Here's the thing. Any new step in your life that's unfamiliar or uncertain is going to bring about a sense of anxiousness or fear to it. It's part of the journey that we have to face and work through. But each time that would happen, I would bypass. And what I was actually doing was associating the safe pathway, meaning the path of least resistance, as God. And when we do that, we start to really notice we're plateauing in our life. Fear continues to grow, and now we're in this bubble, and we're frustrated because we're like, I don't see this kind of fruit. And many of us are one step of moving towards the fear from many things changing, because that kind of decision can create a domino effect. But we haven't been equipped in handling fear and handling anxiety. That's why I have tons of materials I've dedicated to that, including my book, I Will Not Fear, because it covers the issue of drawing a line in the sand with this fear battle, whether it's anxiety, worry, just fear-based living in general, and walking in new patterns, because I want to help empower you that you don't have to be afraid of God and withdraw from him, but to actually draw near and learn to connect to his love, and not avoiding prayer and avoiding the Bible because we're afraid, because we're afraid of going to the Bible because we have a fear-based relationship with God and performance-based, and we're like, oh, I'm gonna read something, it's gonna disturb me, and I'm gonna spin out, because our filter is not being empowered by God's love and his grace and truth that sets us free. Because what we listen to is not setting us free. It's just keeping us in more spinning. You may find that this then, rejection, performance, fear, we develop a punishment-based relationship with God. Now, this infuses a sense of God is angry and moody. He's just irritable. And he's a person to be afraid of, so we then, it feeds that avoidance. And so he doesn't, this is a statement I've said, that God doesn't really love me. It's more he tolerates me. He tolerates me. Or if he loves me, it's this, okay, Mark, all right, because he is love and he's supposed to love. So he does it out of just the faithfulness to who he is in his nature. But he's really just irritated with me. He doesn't really delight in me. And these areas you have to understand tag into, and I'll mention this again, it tags into our earthly father. Your earthly father lens sets up for this. You often carry the duplicate lens of what your earthly father was like, or many fathers, a large percentage of fathers, were very passive in emotions, in spiritual leading in the home. They're very passive. So in that passivity, you're left with this empty kind of vacuum that then allows all these lies and distortions to come in of who God really is. And so in this punishment-based place where we become very hypervigilant and very nervous, very anxious, you're trying to please God with all your just right activity. You become very perfectionistic. When we have a punishment-based relationship with God, we're always afraid of making a wrong step. So we don't make it. We procrastinate. And we don't know just how to be still and just connect with God, because you're always lost in something you think you need to fix. This ties in to a law-based God, which is the way that you follow God is by the letter of the law. Many people who write into me, they'll say, yeah, but what about this? And they'll send me somebody's email newsletter. Many people fail to do that. They're like, well, this preacher, this is what he says. What do you think, Mark? Or this statement, this thing, or this is what my pastor said on Sunday, right? We're all spinning about what we've heard or what we've read or what we said. And what you see in a lot of evaluations and theological perspectives is what Paul warned of. He said the letter kills, but the Spirit gives life. What does that mean? It's interpretation. It's interpretation, how you're interpreting. And we're right now in the middle of teaching on in the book, the OCD Healing Journey, interpreting your thoughts and the meaning. And the interpretation that's being given of scriptures is very, very black and white. It often takes a verse right out and puts it by itself without being plugged into the harmony of scriptures, because our perspective of God needs harmony from beginning to end, of seeing God's nature and seeing who he is, and that it manifests the fruit of the Spirit in our life. It manifests those character qualities of relationship that manifest in our life. But with the law base, it's perfectionism, it's religious perfectionism, and it reproduces that. So pastors that have law base, and you can find it in any denomination, any stream of Christianity. You can find this where law comes in. They often reproduce very heavy rule followers that are, maybe they argue a lot, they debate a lot, but they don't know how to love. They don't know how to let grace have its work. You can have two Christians reading the same verse. One of them goes, This is just great. This is helping my journey. And the other one, spiraling in despair, interpretation. Because when you have a law-based God, a law-based relationship with God, you're going to go by the letter of the law. And so the Bible is always going to be disqualifying you. You hear what I'm saying? So when you read it, you're going to find a disqualification, which at times, like I've said, I've found new versions of where I will read a verse, it'll talk directly about God's love, and they'll still see it in a disqualifying way, no matter what you throw at them. And for example, many religious OCDers fussing over their salvation, fussing over their sanctification, fussing over unpardonable sin, they carry a letter of the law. They carry that. And you could give them the most beautiful verses and they'll find a way to disqualify themselves in a yeah, but what if, and they keep yeah, but what ifing you. Because that's the lens they carry. And so I realized I needed healing because there was a version of all of these influencing my life. And for many of you, you have to realize it's going to involve healing your earthly father lens, because that's really what's popping up. God designed our earthly father and our earthly mother to become filters, to become the starter of how we then relate to God, who calls himself Father. So if I'm relating to, okay, Heavenly Father, my Father who's in heaven, God, my Father, Father God, I'm now triggering an association. What does Father mean to you? Is it a good connection? Is it something that he's here, he's distant? Do you feel like it's crickets all the time when you're trying to talk to God? Oh, he doesn't hear me, he doesn't hear me, he doesn't hear me. Did your earthly dad listen to you? Was he present with you? Did he walk with you? Did he equip you? Did he even, furthermore, teach you how to hear from God so you could learn that in your own journey? So a lot of this is going to lead us to some relearning and some healing in how we're seeing God. And there's a couple takeaways I want to encourage you, more than a couple. I want to give you a few takeaways that I have found to be helpful. Let's relay the foundation here. Let's get back to the fundamentals and relay what is needed for our healing and freedom journey, for mental health, but really just a fruitful walk with God. It all starts with God as a loving Father. The gospel is good news from a good Father who loves you. And we have to begin reestablishing, relaying the foundation. He is love. He doesn't just have love, he is love. He is good. He is good. In fact, Jesus was complimented on goodness, good teacher, and Jesus goes, hey, who are you calling good? There's only one who's good, and that is God. He's speaking of the Father. And it's interesting because Jesus was sinless, right? So he's love, he's good, and he's a father. And we have to relearn that, and that's why I have so much material I've taught on over the years. One of my fundamental books that right now you can get it as a free download. Right now you can get the whole book. It's a free download, but you can also get it in all the other formats as well too. Experiencing God's love as your Father. And I encourage all in the tribe to take advantage of this and take it in and slowly go through it, because this is going to help you to start relearning what is it that I'm associating to God? What is God's perspective over my journey, right? If God were to walk into your house, into your room today, and after you got over the nervousness of like, God's here, wouldn't you want a sense of, what does he think towards me? What does he think about where I'm at? Where does he think about what I'm going through? Well, in order to experience some of that in our faith journey, of course, I'm not saying, okay, trying to find a way to get God to walk into your room. This is a faith journey, right? This is a faith. We're learning to build our faith and belief and trust. We'll start with learning what is a good and loving Father. What does it mean to be loved by him right now in the beloved? What does it mean to know I belong? The Bible uses that term, beloved. Beloved, very fancy word. We are in the beloved, dearly beloved. And there's a war over many of us struggling to to feel that we connect in the beloved. There's a war over that in many of your lives. You're not in the beloved. And if you recognize the references, it goes back to experiences in life that have created distortions in how you see God. So the second thing is, especially when it comes to obsessive compulsive, God is not trying to make you confused. It is amazing how much we associate these confusing, spinny thought cycles. We attribute them to God. When he says, I'm not the author of confusion, but of peace. But that doesn't mean that walking in peace doesn't mean we're not going to face fear. You see, this is where we get confused. We Christians like to follow the peace, right? And that their association with peace is avoiding any discomfort, avoiding any journey of battle, of overcoming. Peace is like I just feel this amazing, I just sit on a beach and I don't have any problems and I don't have to address anything. We have to snap out of that. We have to sober up out of that because it's not that. But God's wants to build a reservoir of peace within us, but that peace that moves through the storms is very, very important. It's not a peace that avoids storms. We walk through it. We face our fears. God is walking with us. But he's not trying to make me confused. And many of us are following that confusion. This is a big premise, is that God doesn't use fear to speak to me, which includes, ladies and gentlemen, anxiety, worry, panic, and obsession. Includes all of those. God is not trying to yell at me. God is not so insecure that he has to scream and get disturbance to get my attention. We have been duped into lies that make us believe that all this anxiety, stress, and worry kind of thoughts, these obsessive things, that God is trying to get my attention. It reveals a distorted filter. That this relationship with God is just this erratic up and down roller coaster kind of thing. And this took relearning for me. And at first it was some resistance. As I stepped away from listening to anxiety all the time and started stepping into what I was afraid of, it changed my life. And it can change yours as well too. I also have learned, and I have a whole series on this, that God's not using toxic guilt to speak into my life. And I have a whole series. I spent some dedicated time just mapping this out, helping to develop your discernment. You can take advantage of that. And when God speaks to, whatever God speaks to, grace is there. And so I want you to understand, and there's two things I want to bring out because grace is so multifaceted. When I'm talking about grace and mental health, it invites us into a journey with God versus trying to fix yourself overnight, trying to I got to make all these things better so then I'm right with God. Grace points to what Christ did. And so we are made right before God right now. And now we're on a journey of processing that out and letting it have a work in our transformed life, stage after stage, precept by precept, chapter by chapter. God's walking a journey with us. He's also grace. What God speaks to, grace is there. He is empowering you. He's adding power to your life. I'll branch off into 2 Timothy 1:7-2, where God's not giving you the spirit of fear, but of what? Power, love, and a sound mind. That's what he's bringing into your life. So power, empowerment. He's adding power. Love. He's wrapping you in his love. And soundness, so that our thoughts are sober and step by step developing self-control, developing deeper root systems. God wants to, in your healing and freedom journey, deepen your root system. So when storms hit and anxiety rises, you feel the anxiety, but you don't feed it. You can feel anxiety, but you don't have to feed it. Right? That's a big difference. So it's this grace understanding, recognize I'm on a journey. It's based on what Christ has done for me. I'm learning to live out of what he's given to me, and I'm learning to just live in that empowerment. He's adding that energy and favor. I need to tune into what God is doing. And for many of you, he's relaying a foundation of love in your life. He's relaying the foundation of grace, because our foundations are built on works, performance, religious trauma, all this stuff that we're healing and working through to relearn who God is to empower us. We're also realizing that it is the truth that sets us free. And I realized, if what I'm associating of like this is the truth, and I'm more bound in my life, am I listening to lies? Am I listening to distortions? If I'm spinning over and over again, I may be listening to distortions that are distorting a sense of truth. Because sometimes what happens is we get accused in our thoughts, and there might be a little like speck of something that could be true, but it's mixed in with all these distortions now. So it is now a package of lies trying to wrap around some facts or something that's appearing as truth, but we manifest confusion. We manifest more anxiety. We manifest more depression, manifest more despair. And I want to let you know that God is always in a work of increasing faith, hope, and love. Paul said in 1 Corinthians, in his writing there, as he talks in 1 Corinthians 13 about faith, hope, and love. And the greatest is love. And faith, hope, and love work together. They're friends. And the foundation's built on love. Love is the foundation. Love is in every stage of what God is building. But hope is resting on the work of love, and faith is the substance of things hoped for. And so a big part of our mental health journey is God healing and bringing us into faith, hope, and love to raise us up as sons and daughters. And as I mentioned already, God is always increasing power, love, and a sound mind. So these are metrics or references or filters or references we're being renewed in. Which one of these you go, that one's really speaking to me. I need to calibrate my focus each day to anchor myself in that, because I'm learning to practice it, not just get in my head, but to practice it in my daily life. I pray that you'll understand that these obsessive thoughts that we're thinking about are not of God. So I pray that in the OCD healing journey, you're getting that. You're allowing God to heal the God filter in your life. If you're watching this on one of my video channels on YouTube or Rumble, do me a favor, just click like and subscribe. Go to markdejesus.com. You can jump in if you're serious about taking further steps in your healing and freedom journey when it comes to mental health. We have a community of believers that are passionate about that as well too. You can join there by going to markdejesus.com and clicking on the community button. You can also support. If you like these broadcasts and you go, you know what, I just want to support with a donation, you can do that as well too. Click on the donate button and you can give a one-time or give on a regular basis. Well, it's been a blessing to be your brother from another mother and share these insights with you today. I'll be back with some more insights for your healing and freedom journey. But in the meantime, I'm out.